Tonight, we're very, very happy to have Linda Janasz with us to facilitate our program. Linda is a PhD. She's a leading researcher, a keynote speaker, an award-winning journalist, and integrative coach. She developed a wonderful program called MMM, which is Mindfulness, Meditation, and Movement, which myself and my colleagues at Federation had the privilege of participating in, and that's how I initially met Linda. She's also the founder of the Mindful Alliance, which is a not-for-profit that supports the work and research from mindfulness and all of its applications. And her goal is to work with individuals and corporations and help us all to find some balance in a world that, as we all know, is sometimes very unbalanced. For me, I just want to say she comes into my PJ Library world, hopefully next month, as she and Paul, who's in the background, become first-time grandparents and PJ Library grandparents. So I can't wait to welcome you to my world. And without further ado, I will let you coach and guide us towards some mindful parenting tips and strategies.
Thank you, Marnie and PJ Library and the entire team at Jewish Federation for inviting me today and supporting the community in a really meaningful way. And I feel really privileged to come into your homes because under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be able to do this, and you're in my home. And thanks for taking the time to do this, because I know more than anything that time is our most precious commodity. So here's what my goal is tonight, in a very kind of focused and precise way. I want to provide you with some immediate tools. I want to explain what mindful parenting is and why it matters, and explain some of the science and the strategies, okay? We put your questions in the question box because hopefully I can answer some of the questions that you might have along the way. But if I don't, if you've got additional questions, let's address them after as a group, because likely your question is also someone else's question. So I'm going to suggest right now, if you're feeling a bit out of control, you're probably not alone. I would say that for many of us, it's a very challenging time. We're either scared about the future, possibly our finances, our health, or the health of those that we care about. And stress makes everything more difficult, including parenting. So now, more than ever, it really is an opportunity to learn and incorporate some evidence-based research and some practices. These are tools that are good for us personally, and I know firsthand they're really helpful when applying these to our parenting. So as Marnie told you, part of my work and my research is coaching and training. And I've also developed some mindfulness-based strategies for performance. And I'm going to say to you that parenting does incorporate performance. So mindfulness is all the buzz, and you've probably heard that term thrown around. But how do we apply this to our own intimate interpersonal lives and that of our relationship with our kids? I think that's really the question. So let's start by looking at the definition of mindfulness. It is a practice of living in the moment, aware of where you are, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. Feelings have sensations. And it's being aware of this without judgment, with an increased acceptance of how we're feeling. Because when we layer our emotions with judgment, either they're good or they're bad, it makes everything a bit more difficult. So we can apply this non-judgmental approach and this awareness to our parenting, and with some consistent practice, we are better able to parent, not by freaking out, how to reduce the amount that we freak out, but by responding to our children's behavior with presence and patience and kindness. And I think that's really important. So having more present acceptance with our children, and in turn ourselves, strengthens and nurtures these really precious relationships. So by really showing up and engaging in the moment and not letting your emotions take over, allows you, all of us, to reduce automatic reactivity. And we can then, from this informed place, rather than purely conditioned responses, shift the way that we interact and elevate the precious moments that we're given. This doesn't mean that you don't get frustrated or angry, but with some consistent practice, you probably will begin to notice a reduction in your triggers, like tantrums, both theirs and yours. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to share a little video with you that kind of in a very short 2-minute way can help us better understand.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. So I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower and one that is accessible by you immediately.
All of us could be superheroes. And I think at the end of the day, that's what our children see us as. They're superheroes. Whoop, let me just make sure that this is stopped. Whoop. All righty, here we are. So I want us to start incorporating a practice right now. What I'd like everybody to do is just simply take a calm and even breath. Inhaling in gently through the nose and exhaling gently. Inhaling on the count of 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhaling 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'm going to encourage you, just during this discussion, I'd like you to notice what that breath regulation, what that calming breath does for you. And then I'm going to circle back at the end to explain to you why mindful breathing can transform how we respond rather than react to what is in front of us. So keep breathing. There are numerous studies that have looked at the benefits related to mindfulness parenting training. And I want to share some of the science with you. Mindfulness parenting includes reducing stress and mood disorders like depression and anxiety. It also helps us strengthen the parent-child relationship. Well, really because in part, when a parent can respond constructively to triggers and stressors when they arise over time, the child feels less alienated. And practicing mindfulness even reduces potential mistreatment. So over time, and this is really important, it takes some consistency. As a parent's ability and attitudes improve, it's kind of not surprising, so does the child's behavior. This takes practice like anything that is worthwhile. Some of the other benefits of mindfulness and mindful parenting: it improves parent-child communication. It reduces the symptoms of hyperactivity in children. It improves parenting satisfaction. It reduces aggression. It lowers depression, as I had said. It lessens stress and anxiety. And overall, it makes parenting feel easier. Parenting is not easy. Let's just be honest. It takes attention and focus. These practices also allow us to build our own resilience and improve our patience and self-compassion. Ultimately, when we are calmer, we can connect with our own inner wisdom. And let me tell you, you don't need to leave your home to do that. Where you are right now is the right place to begin. Just checking in. Are you breathing? You know, I'm often asked, what is the difference in this approach to other parenting styles? And I think that the focus is most often other parenting styles are about how to approach a strategy or a specific behavior, like teaching your child structure, routine, right from wrong. And look, this is all really important. But when combined with mindful parenting, we approach tools and strategies with more calm and patience and compassion. I think one of our main goals is to help our children deal and manage their own stress, but it really needs to start with us. So some of the other qualities, really there are 3 pillars of mindful parenting. It's awareness and attention to the present moment in an attitudinal way. It's understanding our own behavior and being less judgmental of it. And when these are really broken down, there are some specific skills and strategies. And here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to go through some of these strategies right now. And these are what you can immediately begin to incorporate. One of them is mindful listening or active listening to your children. Truly listening and observing them with your full attention, including eye contact. When you see them, they feel seen, and that's really important. As my dear friend, Rabbi Arnie says, that kavanah, this idea of focused, mindful intention in prayer, is that shift of being fully present with what is in front of it. It elevates presence and meaning. And I will tell you, when we can give that to our children, it elevates what is most precious to me in our lives. Look, this takes lots of patience and tons of practice. But we humans learn by doing it. Active listening and beginning again tomorrow. Active awareness, that's another part of this, is using our senses to really bring us back to being present. I call it the snapshot. If you look around where you are, imagine that you are taking your camera, you're taking a picture for a momentary second. It shifts us out of habitual behavior. So take a snapshot, because these are precious memories for you and your children. The time will go by quickly. Another part of this is an acceptance of what we're feeling now. Look, we layer everything with judgments, and I said that earlier. We are scared, we are angry, or we're frightened. You know, Brene Brown, the wonderful researcher, said, it's okay to be scared, but it's not okay to be scary. And that's important for our kids. Not having unrealistic expectations of our children is also really important. An acceptance of what is, rather than what we think things have to be all the time. So modeling for our kids, allowing them to see us when we practice calm in the chaos with tone and body language. They are looking to us for cues. At the end of the day, we know with communication, most of our language is nonverbal. So they are looking to us, not listening as much to what we say, but watching what we do. And I'm going to say demonstrating compassion is also very important. We probably will not agree with our children's behavior much of the time, but mindful parenting encourages us to have some compassion. Treat your children in the moment as if you are hearing them and seeing them. Otherwise, they will act out to get your attention. So that self-compassion also needs to be for you, because when we have less blame and shame, it is better for everyone. And lastly, how not to freak out is emotional regulation. Not letting your emotions trigger immediate reactions like yelling. So practicing some consistent mindfulness and meditation just generally enables us to reduce our freaking out. It's a stop, and this is why the breath is so important. It helps us avoid overreacting. It triggers that part of our brain to go from fight and flight to rest and digest. And we're going to talk more about this. So why is mindful parenting so important for our well-being as well? When we mind wander, which we do 47% of the time, half of the time we are elsewhere, it's ubiquitous, but it precedes unhappiness. We can increase our own happiness by engaging with our children in a direct way, because the more we're distracted, the unhappier we are. So training in mindful parenting and staying present reduces our stress, our anxiety, and it improves our well-being and the well-being of the entire family. And that's important for emotional and physical health. So another tool in our toolkit is practice gratitude. It rewires our brain. And this is a brain scan of somebody who has actively and is actively practicing gratitude. We can actually see it on a brain scan. And I think that that is pretty extraordinary. The simplest and most effective way for you to change your mindset, all of our mindsets, and I know for me personally, I get up in the morning and before my feet hit the ground, I do think about what I am most grateful for. It is the main ingredient to a happier life. You know, it's really interesting, and this is pretty extraordinary. Evidence-based research says by simply noting 3 things that you're grateful for in the span of 21 days every day shifts your mindset. What we're essentially doing is cueing our brain to treat joy and happiness as an important experience neurologically, and it becomes a more familiar pattern. One thing you can do is share this with your kids and your grandchildren. Let them see you practicing gratitude and ask them, what are you grateful for? It is a simple, easy, meaningful, and powerful practice. Hope you're still breathing. This conscious pattern of breathing, I will tell you, is the most productive approach for creating immediately stress release. It reduces anxiety and lowers depression. And when we are calmer, we tend to be more responsive and less reactive. That is the magic tool, superheroes, that I'm going to give you tonight that I want and I encourage you to start incorporating. Here is the science. We breathe about 23,000 times a day. And by slowing the breath down, it cues the autonomic nervous system and the vagal nerve to go from fight or flight or freeze. That's our amygdala, that part of our brain that has that stress response that pumps out that hormone cortisol. Breath allows us to go to rest and digest. And let me tell you something really interesting. Our brain right now is on freeze. That's one of those fight, flight, and freeze responses. That's what pandemic is doing to us. Our brain is in that freeze state, and it feels exhausting. I would say that most of us feel pretty tired. Regulating breath allows us to go from freeze to ease, freeze to ease. Keeping your mind focused on your breath is also a form of meditation. Even just a few minutes a day, closing your eyes. When your mind wanders, bring it back. It's a bicep curl for our brain, that muscle, and we also can see that on a brain scan. So I'm going to encourage you to incorporate this breath and some of these strategies. Now, I often say this, when I'm teaching, as the team at Federation knows, or even in my private practice, I say, here's your homework or your own work, but tonight I'm going to give you some shalom work. This is about bringing more peace into your heart and into your home. The great British philosopher, and those who know me know this is one of my favorites, and I know, Anna, it's yours as well. George Bernard Shaw said, we don't find ourselves, we create ourselves. We don't find ourselves, we create ourselves. Our hardwiring is difficult. We tend to fall back to patterns, even if it's reactivity. It's hard to override that conditioning. But what mindful parenting allows us to do is shift and create new and meaningful and intentional ways of embracing the blessed moments that we're given. So your shalom work is breathe. Take snapshots, memories of these miraculous moments. But taking a moment to take a mental picture also shifts us from behaviors, some self-compassion and patience. Don't have unrealistically high standards. When you're tired, rest. When your children are tired, let them rest. And awareness of what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and be grateful. All of this time, even the difficult moments, are sacred. Bottom line is, mindful parenting allows us to embrace our moments, all of our moments, with increased ease and grace, and with less stress and more patience and more compassion for others and for ourselves. If you're thinking of giving your children a gift, I'd say the greatest gift that you can give them is your attention, your presence, your love, and your kindness. I'm going to end this with a beautiful proverb that I recently read. It says, if there is light in the soul, there is beauty in the person. If there is beauty in the person, there is harmony in the house. And if there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. And if there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. So stay present, stay in, stay safe. And if you have additional questions for me, you can email me at linda@mindfulalliance.org. Alrighty, so here's what I'm going to do. If there are questions, discussions, anything, but at the end of the day, I do encourage all of us. Mindful parenting, mindful connections in all of our relationships makes an enormous, enormous difference. It's really, in a Kavana way, opening up to our experiencing and embracing and honoring those around us. So here I see in the chat, Jennifer said, can you recommend any books with children, whether they read them aloud or not? What can you begin for beginning meditation? Okay, I'm gonna start with beginning meditation for a family. Berkeley Greater Good, which I've actually have some work published there, which some of our work through Jewish Federation, the Mindful Project, the Working Wisdom Project, they have wonderful, wonderful support for parenting, both with meditation and mindfulness and terrific practices that you can incorporate. So they're free, they're readily available, they're also a nonprofit, and I would encourage you to look there as well as their list of books, because they've certainly put some wonderful, wonderful ones together. There is another parenting book that I would recommend that I recently gave to somebody who is very near and dear to me. It's called Parenting from the Inside Out. It's about enjoying this extraordinary, challenging, chaotic, and joyful relationship, which is parenting. I see a thank you, which means a lot to me. So we did a lot today in a very short period of time, but what we know is that none of this needs to be perfect. It just needs to be a little bit every day. The more familiar we become with active listening, compassion, breathing, engagement, and gratitude, the more familiar it becomes. And I can tell you, I know firsthand, this work has transformed my own experience. And I am just so incredibly grateful every day to share this science and these practices with others. Thank you, thank you. I see some other thank yous. Well, good. It is getting a little bit late. Unless anybody has anything else, any other questions, I am giving you all in your homes a virtual hug. And I hope and pray that we will all be able to see each other soon. I know that parenting and working with kids is additionally hard. So have some self-compassion. And the unrealistically high standards, a little more television won't hurt anybody, okay? Be kind to yourself. And goodness and mindful parenting and grandparenting to all. Okay? Have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
All right. Linda, thank you so much on behalf of me and our PJ families and our PJ parents and our grandparents and our friends and our relatives and everybody that
Thank you, Linda.
PJ Library and Jewish Federation touch and you have touched this evening. I am very, very grateful. So forget the binge. I'll end with my gratefulness.
All right.
And Lila Tov.
Thank you for the work that Federation does for supporting and helping the community during times of joy and of stress, and Marnie, for all the great work that PJ Library does. Thank you to everyone. And let's take this moment to moment and one day at a time. Bye, everyone.